Yes.
You mind out? Good job. See, you've got orders.
Can't even tell.
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Andy Rickley. I am the superintendent of the Papillion La Vista Community Schools. So for those of you who are in attendance this evening, welcome. For those of you that weren't able to make it to our central office technology training center, those of you that are viewing online, thank you for joining us. This promises to be a wonderful evening. So before we start, Vaping and Your Student, I would like to thank our Papillion La Vista Schools Foundation. So our foundation has generously provided a grant that will fund these parent training series, including our session tonight. So we're very grateful to have our foundation support. Second thing, I'd just like to tell you that most of you probably know that in addition to being your superintendent, I'm the parent of 3 school-age children. So vaping is something that's important to me as an educational leader, it's important to me as a parent, and I know it's a critical issue for all of you who are here this evening and are joining us online. Just a few things about the rules of engagement. We're going to try to keep this exactly at 60 minutes. We really want to be respectful of your time. We have a number of guest speakers that will be joining us this evening. If you have questions as we go throughout this evening, either with the individual speakers or with our panel that we'll be introducing in a little bit, we would ask that you submit your questions online. We will do our very best through our Director of Communications, Ms. Iman, to get the questions routed to me or our resident experts. For those of you who are in attendance, we will only take questions if they're submitted on a note card. We're not going to do hot mic. That's not how we're going to structure that this evening. So if you have a question, please take a note of it and make sure it gets written down. So before I turn it over to our guest speaker, just to tee it up a little bit, we're talking about vaping and your student. This is a critical topic. We know based on statistics, we know based on anecdotal evidence, we know based on evidence from our building principal that this is a very real issue. We know that vaping is addictive, we know that it is harmful, and it is extremely pervasive. In fact, we recently had Dr. Brian King from the Centers of Disease Control, who is one of the CDC experts on vaping and smoking all across the country, that informed us as the CDC has tracked drug patterns and drug trends all across the United States for almost 100 years, vaping has caught on more quickly than virtually any other drug trend that they've witnessed in the entire organization's history. So we know that this is a very big deal. Our fear as school leaders is that we have fewer and fewer students that are doing traditional smoking through tobacco, through pipes, through cigars, through cigarettes, but they're increasingly turning to e-cigarettes. We are deeply concerned about this, and I suspect you are as well. So again, just a reminder on the questions, a reminder on the note cards for our people in attendance. At this point in time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Andy Mahan with the Papillion Police Department. Andy is an SRO. He currently works at Papillion La Vista South High. Andy's going to talk just a little bit about vaping from the police and law enforcement perspective, as well as some of the things that he sees working in our schools every day. Without further ado, I would hand it off to Andy Mahan.
Thank you, Dr. Rickley. Okay. Am I on? Okay. I'm Officer Mahan. I am the School Resource Officer at Papillion South High School. I put together a little slideshow just based with information from research I've done, as well as stuff I've come across in personal experience as this high school resource officer. And who helped me prepare this presentation, it's Officer Adam Bamer. He's the SRO at Papillion La Vista High School, and Officer Joby Dreff. She is last year's SRO from Papillion La Vista South High School. She decided to go back to the road. She is a drug recognition expert with Papillion Police Department. We're very lucky to have her. We use her as a very valuable tool when we are doing some investigations at the school. Okay, we're basically just going to discuss what parents, employees, school employees, SROs, what we're seeing and what we're hearing about in our schools. We're just going to hit on alcohol, marijuana, vapes, e-cigarettes, alternative nicotine products, as well as THC vapes and other CBD or THC products, edibles, and then also concentrated THC substances. First off, alcohol, most abused drug in the United States. I'd venture to say in the world, you look at YouTube, it's just intoxicated people from all countries. It's not just America. Issue with schools are students sometimes bring alcohol to school, and it's very easy to hide. All students are allowed water bottles of some type. And fortunately, alcohol is one of those things that's very easy to detect. You don't have to be a law enforcement officer to tell when somebody's under the influence. This is a Nebraska revised statute. This is an important one. I just wanted to get out to students and parents because there are occasional students that will get together and have minor possession parties, MIP parties, get together and drink in groups. Sometimes these young people don't know their limits. So this law was passed that when there is a minor under the influence of alcohol, if a minor within that group needs medical assistance due to an alcohol overdose, students or minors can call the police, can call for emergency medical assistance for that patient, and they do not have to worry about repercussions or being charged with minor possession of alcohol. The law realizes that it's more important to get somebody some emergency help than it is to punish somebody and hold them accountable. So it's just a priority of life in that situation. But the things are, they have to call the police, they have to stay there, and they have to cooperate with law enforcement and rescue personnel. Marijuana, we'll just hit on that. Same thing, it's a problem in most schools, especially with Colorado being a border state. A lot more of that stuff is coming even this side of our state. These packages here, these cigarillo packages, these are mainly tobacco. However, in my 11 years of law enforcement experience, I have yet to see these little cigarillo and cigars be used to smoke as they are. So every time I've seen those, every single time I've seen those, it is related to those things being hollowed out and stuffed with marijuana and used in that capacity. Also, another clue I want to get to parents. Very few times in my 39 years have I ever had a medical need for eyedrops. Some people do have naturally dry eyes, but I think it's suspicious, and I think most people would agree. You see students with questionable actions, but they always have eyedrops. It's a clue. That's what we like to call it. So parents, if you see this, if you have a suspicion, do some investigating, do some digging, do some looking. Odds are your kid is hiding something. Vapes, e-cigarettes, alternative nicotine products. I brought a few of my confiscated stash. Okay. This right here is the Joule. Many of you have probably heard of it. This is the most popular e-cigarette there is, and one thing most people don't realize is every single Joule contains a high level of nicotine. And as you can see, it has a USB charger. So you just plug it into a USB port, laptop, computer, your little Apple box charger, plug it into a wall to charge it. Some students, unfortunately, are so brazen that they'll walk into class, plug it right in, and just assume that the teachers and adults don't realize what it is. And as I said, the Joule vape has so much nicotine. This is a Joule cartridge. Just one cartridge, as you'll see in a later slide, one cartridge has 20 cigarettes worth of nicotine. And if that's not bad enough, some students are going through multiple cartridges a day. Also, these things are also known as ENDS, or electronic nicotine delivery system. Originally, they're designed to be a smoking cessation tool, and it's always been believed or always been advertised that they're a safer alternative to smoking actual tobacco products, cigarettes, cigars, pipes. That is not completely accurate. So what is vaping? Vaping is the act of inhaling or inhaling and exhaling the vapor produced by heating a liquid. All of these are electronic devices. They all have heating devices. They all heat. They heat the vapor inside, and the person inhales it and exhales it, and when they inhale it is full of nicotine plus other dangerous chemicals. It's also called Jouling, which is named after the most popular brand, Joule. And unfortunately, a lot of these devices can also be used with marijuana, hash oil, and other substances. So I just found out an interesting thing is Joule is the fastest company to ever reach a $1 billion valuation, faster than Facebook. So if that tells you anything about how popular these devices are. Also, these here are a couple of vape juices or vape oils. It's commonly called juice. And for example, this is Cotton Burst. Okay, it says juicy pod juices. It makes it sound like a candy. And they're not advertising to people like me. Okay, they're advertising to our younger people or youth. So, as I have in this slide, what is a Joule? And like I said, it's basically two components. This still has some nicotine juice in it. So all you do is plug it in. It's already charged, right? It would already be charged. So all the person has to do is put their mouth on it, inhale it, and the heating element will heat up that liquid into a vapor, and the person will inhale, exhale, and get their nicotine delivered into their body. So. And as I said, one little pod, one little cartridge, 20, that's a whole pack of cigarettes. And they don't typically sell them individually. They usually sell them in, as you can see in the slide, it's like a 4-pack. So that's a lot of nicotine for especially a young person. A lot of chemicals are found in these vape juices. There's mainly three main ingredients to this. You got the PG or VG, it's like a vegetable, what do I have up there, sorry. Vegetable glycerin or propylene glycerin. Plus you got just food flavorings, nicotine, and a water. But these also contain like so many more ingredients. It's always said, and people hear all the time, that a lot of these contain formaldehyde. And I try to pass that on to students, like, do you know what formaldehyde is mainly used for? It's used for the embalming of dead bodies. And I just point out to them that they're taking that liquid, they're taking that chemical, and they're putting it in their body. And vapor in your lungs, it's already not a good combination. So heating all these chemicals and going in their body, I just try to, I can't stress to them enough when I see them in possession of something, that I just try to get my point across as much as I can. Nicotine alternatives. Okay, I put up here Nicoderm patches, nicotine patches. Now, I'll share with you an experience of a situation of a student we have, without saying his name. He is addicted to nicotine due to vape and e-cigarette usage. I mean, full-blown addiction. Cannot go a whole school day without vaping. Many of these students are even waking up in the middle of the night, their body's waking up in the middle of the night just to vape. I've had students tell me their daily morning ritual is they wake up, they sit in bed and vape for about 15, 20 minutes before even getting out of bed. But this one student, he had a full-blown addiction, and his parents realized it, so they wanted to get him some treatment. So they did take him to the hospital. The nurse recommended nicotine patches. So he was wearing nicotine patches, and he was caught wearing a nicotine patch in school, which is, for his age, it was illegal and also a school policy violation. Digging into it more and talking to him, we realized that he's trying to get off nicotine, basically, but he never stopped vaping. So not only is he getting nicotine from the nicotine patches, he's still vaping, getting nicotine that way, so he's getting a double dose. So he's actually doing more harm to his body than he's doing the exact opposite of what him and his parents were hoping to do. Not only do we have nicotine vapes, unfortunately in our schools, we are seeing the introduction of THC vapes or dab pens, edibles. I do not have any with me. I did not check any out from evidence. I don't keep them in my personal confiscated stash because I don't want to be accused of being in possession of these items. But the packaging on these, if you can look at the some of the packaging I found, Fruity Pebbles, Dank Vapes is a very popular brand. We have Gorilla Glue, Lemon Sunshine, Mango Kush. I mean, like as I said earlier, they're not advertising for people like me. They're trying to compare these things, make them as appealing as candy. You know, make it look like it's a fun dessert to have. And the only thing is, you look on the back of these, and they will have some of their THC potency. For Dank Vapes, the Sour Diesel, for example, claims a 90.20 THC percentage. The middle one, what is that called? Exotic Carts, Sativa, 80 to 85%. And then we have Candyland, which is 90.6% THC. And these basic little pens, they come in little cartridges. You screw onto a little atomizer, which is similar to the vapes. It has a heating element, and that's how it's delivered, similar fashion as a vape. Also, we have the edibles. Looks like gummy bears. You know, same thing, still contains the THC. We also have BTOs, or butane hash oils. These are concentrated THC. They come into a few different types. We have the shatter, wax, crumble, butter, oil. A lot of these are put into some type of paraphernalia like a pipe, as you can see on, it looks like your typical marijuana pipe, but what they're doing is they're taking this concentrated oil and they're smoking it in a similar fashion as they would with the green leafy marijuana. Others are taking the joints of the green leafy marijuana and they're rolling it in some heated up butter, wax, shatter, and they're smoking it that way. So you can think of it as like a laced joint. It's already laced with more THC. Also, you can see they've got smoking heating devices. They'll have to use a physical flame, like a butane little torch or lighter, to heat the liquid, and same thing. They inhale it, and then they get the chemical delivered to them that way. And that's the end of my presentation so far. My main concern is just trying to raise awareness to the parents that if you have a feeling, if you ever had a thought that your student might be involved in this, chances are it's worth looking into. So we care about our students, we care about all the youth in the community, and we just want to make everybody realize that this is a growing concern that we do have. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Officer Mahan. That was excellent information. Just a reminder to those that are in attendance as well as those that are viewing online, if you have questions, please submit them online. And for our participants here that are live with us, please write your questions down on a note card and then we'll push those to the panel at the very end. Our next speaker is Terry Erickson. Terry is a tobacco cessation specialist with CHI Health. She's going to talk to us a little bit about vaping from the medical perspective. Ms. Erickson.
Okay, so thanks for having me. My name is Terry Erickson. Let me get my little device here. All right. Just a couple of little things, little caveats. Just pointing out how these vapes do come in so many different shapes and sizes. As a parent, I know it's very hard to keep up with all the different things to look for with your kids because it's changing so much. Look at, there's e-cigarettes, there's e-pipes, and then of course all the different ones here. And I just wanted to point out this one here. To me, when I first saw this, I thought it was extra battery backup for someone's phone charger. Another one people don't recognize, this teardrop shaped device is also a different vape. So again, they come in many, many different shapes and sizes. All right. Okay, I'm gonna back up one. I did want to elaborate one thing about Joule that's interesting about this product. So Joule quickly overtook the market, just like he said. And actually they had about 75% of the market last time that I checked. And what's unique about Joule is they formulated it differently. Rather than traditional just freebase nicotine, you're vaporizing nicotine salts. And why that is important is they were able to raise the nicotine level in the Joule so that you're getting more nicotine than traditionally what people would get just with other e-cigarettes, as well as different vaping devices or traditional cigarettes. And with using that nicotine salt, there is less vapor cloud. I think most of you have probably been driving down the road and saw somebody's window open and this enormous big rush of vapor or aerosol has come out of their car, and you think, what is that? Well, that's somebody that's using an e-cigarette. But with the nicotine, or with the nicotine salt in the Joule, they can vape on it. It's a very small vapor cloud, so it disappears very quickly, and it's harder to catch. I know people for a while were doing the Joule challenge, where they were kind of challenging each other to, when the teacher's up in the front, turn around, quick take a puff on your Joule. Again, because it looks like a flash drive, it's easy to hide. Now, with using that nicotine salt, it's also less harsh, so it's not as harsh on their throat. So when they say they were marketing this to people to help them quit smoking, well, people that are used to smoking, I think, are probably used to the harshness. So this here was another reason that leads me to believe they were going after kids, okay? Because they tried to make it easier for someone who's not familiar with this type of product to become comfortable with it. They have taken several of the flavorings off the market, which I think is definitely a step in the right direction, in particular with the Joule. There also is no nicotine-free version of Joule. Most people don't realize that, especially kids. They think, oh, it's just water vapor, it's nothing else. Oh, this way. Why do we care about nicotine, especially in our youth? Well, one of the concerns is the adolescent brain is not fully developed till about age 25, 26. So in this time, your brain is constantly making different synapses and formations. Well, being exposed to this nicotine can actually change your brain. And in that, it can affect your ability to, your attention span, your ability to learn, possibly your mood, especially if you're having withdrawal symptoms, and then impulse control. And again, adults are not affected the same way because their brains are fully developed. So especially with kids, that can have long-term effects on them. All right, with the EJuice, you know, the EJuice comes in many different bottles. You can have the ones that are supposed to be contained in the pod of the Joule. Kids have learned how to refill these, to open them up even though they're not supposed to, and fill them with God knows what. But currently with EJuice, they're supposed to be regulated by the FDA, but it's not very well enforced yet. It's such a new thing, they can't really keep up with all of that. There's thousands of chemical variations with all of the different flavors. So how can they do tests on that to see what exactly the effects on our lungs are? So that's a huge concern. There's often non-scientific measuring. I know at some point when these vape shops were first popping up, it kind of looked like a coffee creamer dispenser where they would just, you know, pump this much nicotine and fill the rest with, you know, whatever. So it was very non-scientific. Hopefully that will help some. When they did do some tests on some of the EJuice that was listed as non-nicotine, sometimes it had nicotine in it. So that also is a concern. So what's in this vapor that these, you know, our kids are putting into their lungs? They did mention the vegetable glycerin and the propylene glycol. Those are the two main ingredients with the nicotine that's typically there, and different flavorings. When you heat these products up, okay, even propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, and the flavorings, they might be okay for food, for me to ingest that goes into my stomach, but they have not been tested the long-term effects of what they do to the inside of my lungs, okay? Now with, again, typically they have nicotine. I believe Brian King said like 98% of the e-cigarettes out in the United States have nicotine because there's not near as much demand for the non-nicotine kind. But when you vaporize vaporize the liquid, it turns it into that ultra fine particle. So when you inhale that, it goes down deeper into our lungs than even traditional cigarettes, the combustible kind. They mentioned the heating device that's inside e-cigarettes. All of those, it has to heat that liquid to a temperature to vaporize it. Well, anything that gets heated over and over again wears out. And most people that use e-cigarettes realize at some point you have to replace the heating element in there. And that's just one of my hypotheses why there's heavy metals found inside that aerosol vapor, because of that heating up. You are actually heating that up and then sucking it again deep into your lungs. Now, all the different flavorings, because there's so many different concoctions, I just don't know how you could do studies. How do you do good research on something that is constantly changing and different variations? With these products, when they're heated up, some of the chemicals that may have been safe alone turn into other chemicals, such as the formaldehyde, the acetaldehyde, and the acrolein. And some of these are thought to cause cancer. There was a study from the University of North Carolina that found that the propylene glycol and the vegetable glycerin would be toxic to our cells. So it is not good for them and damages those cells. The acetaldehyde, the acrolein, and the formaldehyde may cause lung disease and different cardiovascular. We're actually starting to think it might be some of the flavorings in there that's also damaging the inside of our blood vessels, and including our lungs. The acrolein can cause acute lung injury and possibly COPD, and may cause asthma and possibly cancer. Those are all information from the American Lung Association. So if I'm a kid and I'm thinking about how cool it might be to vape because my friends are doing that, some of the things I hope they might think about. When you're exposing your lungs to these products, it's promoting lung inflammation, irritation inside there. Remember, your lungs have an important job of transferring oxygen and carbon dioxide. Well, it can't do that when it's inflamed and swollen. Just like if I sprain my ankle and my ankle's all swollen, I can't walk as well. This can promote wheezing, shortness of breath. They might have a lot of cough and can actually trigger asthma attacks. So that would be definitely a deterrent from that. I would like to show you this video really quickly. Hopefully this turns it on rather than going to the next slide. Oh, no, it doesn't. Are you able to hit play back there to make the video? Here we go. Oh, they didn't turn up the sound.
There won't be sound.
Oh, okay. Well, so anyways, this gentleman here is talking about the effects of vaping. I'm sorry, they didn't tell me there would be no sound. So he's really also, as a younger person, perhaps, I'm hoping there's some students out there that are watching this. I know they take their peers and other people closer to their age a little bit more seriously than sometimes somebody that's older. So I just wanted to include some of this. So there, fact one, Joule pod has the same amount of nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes. Fact two, look at all that smoke. Well, maybe this isn't going to work. Okay, so we're going to jump ship on that. That did not, I don't know what happened there. Okay, there is another phenomenon. There is something called popcorn lung, and people think of popcorn. And the reason it has this name is there's a popcorn factory that was using a chemical. It's been approved for consumption again for us to eat it. It's called diacetyl, and it has a buttery flavoring, and it's was very commonly used in a lot of vape juice that has kind of that buttery, kind of creamy sort of like creme brulee type of a taste. And with that, in the popcorn factory, they realized that their employees were getting sick. And when they went to do some further analysis on this, they had, the formal term is bronchiolitis obliterans. Essentially, they were obliterating the alveoli inside their lungs that do that blockage because it was so inflamed. That can't happen, and these people would have problems with that. The concern with that, there's no cure for this. So ironically, they took diacetyl off the market for food, but it's still allowed. It's not banned in like e-cigarettes. Next, so this video is not going to show either? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Well, I brought this video just because it had a great story. There is a gentleman, I'm sorry, I think it was John Hopkins. Again, it said this in the video, so I didn't write it down. He is an athlete that suddenly started getting sick. He was short of breath. He was starting to wheeze a little bit, didn't feel well. He eventually went to the doctor. He ended up requiring a double lung transplant due to the damage that was done to his lungs, that the pulmonologist that talks in this video, he says he had never seen anything like it, and this person was just vaping. So that was a huge concern. You may have heard of the big stories about the problems with the lung injury that has been going on in the United States. As of December 4th, there was 2,291 cases of hospitalized patients, and 48 people have died. Now, what's interesting to me is the common age of these people. 15% of them were under 18 years of age, 38%, so the largest group was 18 to 24. Both of those groups are under that age of 25, 26. Most people that start smoking or get addicted to nicotine happens before about age 25. Now, there was 1,184 patients that had complete data on them. Most of them did report using THC products like they talked about. But what was interesting to me, 13% of them reported exclusive use of just nicotine-containing products, so non-THC. So it was just vaping. Then there was 4% that reported that they were using just vape juice that did not even have nicotine in it. So whether they were telling the truth, I guess I don't know for certain, but that is the data that they have. Let's see. When they did go in and analyze 29 patients and looked inside their lungs, they did find one common thing, and it was vitamin E acetate. So vitamin E acetate is used in the THC oils because it's kind of a thickener, and what the reason is the people, especially bootlegs, so people that don't have licenses to use these or distribute these products, by using that thickener in there, they can sell more of it and make more money, is really how that came along. That vitamin E acetate, and they call it the THC carts. That's what the kids call them rather than cartridges. And like we said, THC is illegal in Nebraska. So my next question here, look at these devices, or these different packages here. Kingpin on the left, Kingpin on the right, Stinzy, I guess, on the there, and then on the other side. Can you tell the difference at a glance if you were just someone getting those? What's interesting is on the right, these are legitimate legal products. On the left, these are all knockoffs. These are the ones that are illegal and possibly the type of devices that you mentioned, the Dank products, and actually Dank was one of the brands that had a huge incidence of having the vitamin E acetate and was linked to a lot of those lung injury cases and possible deaths. So what's in the secondhand vapor? Essentially, it's hard to tell, but we believe a lot of the same things. If you're bringing it into your lungs and you're exhaling all of it, some of those same things could be the nicotine, the ultra fine particles, etc. What are the long-term effects of those? We don't know. Remember years ago when people were smoking, we thought it was fine. Doctors would tell women to smoke to lose weight because they thought, hey, it works, is what their theory was. So what's our bottom line e-cigarette concern? How do you do good quality research on something that's always changing? How does this device compare to the research if you did it with this device? Or if somebody was inhaling off of this device? They're all so different. I just don't know how you do good quality research comparing all of these things because there's so many varieties. Are they targeting our youth? I have to feel that they probably are. Like we said, the different flavorings, the way they market it on, all the social media, all of those things I feel were directly at our kids. Is it permanently changing their developing brain? Yes, okay, there is changes to their brain. Is it a possible gateway to e-cigarette or to regular cigarettes and other drugs? Possibly, when you vape marijuana, You can't smell it. If you had a traditional marijuana joint, you'd smell it throughout the whole room. But if somebody's vaping marijuana, the smell, it doesn't waft out there. And unless you're standing right there, you don't know they're doing it. So what I like to think is all of our students and our kids, they're the guinea pig of this, the big tobacco or the big vaping, whatever you want to call this. It's interesting, you know, Marlboro, which I think was bought out by, was it Altria? They have now bought into Joule, you know, so the big tobacco companies are morphing into the vaping land because they see that as the future. So anyways, I appreciate you listening, and I will pass it on to the next person.
Picking up audio on the lapel mic. Okay, outstanding. So with the remaining time we have left, we have just about 25 minutes. Here's what we're going to do. We have approximately 140 people that are watching online. And we have a number of people here. We're going to really try to do our best to honor questions from both sets of individuals. We don't want this room to monopolize the questions. We don't want our online community to monopolize questions. So our Director of Communications, Ms. Annette Eyman, will help me moderate here a little bit. As we turn to questions, though, I would like to introduce our panel. We have 6 outstanding individuals behind me. Some of these individuals we've already heard from. From Papillion La Vista High School, we have Principal Jerry Kalina and his resource officer, Adam Bamer. We have from Papillion La Vista South, Principal Jeff Johnson. We already heard from Officer Andy Mahan. We heard from Terry Erickson from CHI. We also have Brooklyn Larimore, who's currently a college student here in the Omaha metro area, who's an activist and has done some research of her own in the area of tobacco usage and cessation. So you have 6 outstanding individuals here. We'll start processing the questions for the next 25 minutes or whatever time we have remaining, and then we'll close this up. And our very first question, Ms. Eyman.
And panelists, can you make sure you talk into the microphone so that it's heard on Facebook Live?
The very first question from our studio audience. What is the youngest age that has been encountered in PLV schools where vaping has occurred? Elementary or mainly middle school and high school? I'll turn it over to our panel.
In your high school. Oh, okay, sorry. Who's taking this? Principal or the?
I can only speak for the high school. At the high school, we've obviously had some freshmen that were vaping. So in our building, the youngest are freshmen.
I've spoken to our middle school SROs about this subject as well, and there are vapes that are being found in middle school. Papillion does not have SROs in elementary schools. We do make occasional stops as often as we can, our officers do, but on a full-time basis, middle school is the lowest our SRO program goes to, but vaping is a problem in our middle schools as well.
Any other thoughts on that panel? Okay. I can give you my parent perspective on this one as well. I have a high schooler, I have a middle schooler, I have an elementary age student. I can tell you from both my middle school student and high school students, they've told me numerous stories that they have seen it in both of their respective buildings. Haven't heard about it at the elementary level, not suggesting that it isn't happening there or hasn't happened there, but just from my experience as a parent, I haven't seen it there, luckily. We're going to go to the next question from online. The question online submitted was, so if they are trying to quit vaping, then why are nicotine patches not allowed? Then why are nicotine patches not allowed? Please, Ms. Erickson.
The reason is nicotine patches are not approved for anyone under 18 years of age. And the reason is because there's no research and study on those. And it would be unethical to do a study on young kids that weren't using nicotine. So now we're into this new uncharted territory, essentially. And people ask, really quick, why you would use nicotine to get yourself off nicotine, and really what it's doing is it's just feeding the little nicotine receptors in your brain while you're learning how to go about your day and your business without
vaping or smoking or whatever you're trying to do, and then they gradually wean that level down.
Other thoughts on that? Ms. Erickson answered that pretty authoritatively. So we're going back to our studio audience with a question. The next question from our live audience is, where or how are students getting these devices? Panel.
Friends, just like the old cigarettes, stealing it from parents. I know, at least in my school district, which I don't live in Papillion, La Vista, high schoolers have a big little market of selling it to middle schoolers, so that can be a concern. But a lot of it is also online. So that's the big thing, because you can, anyone can say they're whatever age and put in whatever documentation that they're asking for. So that's one of the biggest places people get it. Friends and relatives and big brothers and big sisters, kind of like alcohol, I guess. Anyone?
Yeah, being recently graduated from high school and being in college, majority of people that I know who use these products got it from older siblings, or just like I was 18 when I was a senior, and so I had younger people in my high school say like, hey, you're 18, you can buy this. And it's like, people are doing that because it's a source of income for high school students, unfortunately, but that is primarily just like alcohol. They're just getting it from older siblings primarily, is from what I see.
Starting January 1st of this next year, though, the law has changed that you will have to be 19 to purchase tobacco products. So I'm hoping that's going to help a little bit with the high school, because most people, I suppose there's a few kids that are 19 in high school, but majority not.
Thank you, Brooklyn and Terry. My middle school daughter remarked to me, Dad, there's actually a shop within 2 blocks of Papillion Middle School. Not singling out any one of our vendors, but she thought that was kind of interesting, and as a parent, I do as well. Next question's coming in from online. This question came in from Dawn. What are the consequences when a student is caught vaping? And I'm assuming from this question, Dawn, you mean what are the potential legal consequences from an SRO? And I suspect she's also asking from a school district perspective, what type of disciplinary process would a student face if they were caught? So this is one for law enforcement and our school people.
Yes, from the law enforcement perspective, an individual that's caught vaping would be issued a citation for minor in possession of tobacco. And from the school perspective, it's just a little bit differently, so it's from both sides. And unfortunately, like Officer Mahan had explained earlier, is that these forms of vapes are also in the THC vapes as well, which you'd receive a citation for possession of drug paraphernalia as well as possession of marijuana less than an ounce.
In terms of the discipline for high school students, first offense, typically kids are going to go home for a day. If there's a second offense of vaping, with that first offense comes a conversation with the parent. Second offense, same type of thing. You have a conversation with the parent, try to educate the student as to the dangers. But ultimately, both Jeff and I suspend students out of school.
Thank you, Mr. Kleina and Officer Bamer. Back to our live audience. The next question is, what is the best approach you've seen to end vaping in youth once they've been confronted?
Do I understand the question to be how to help them stop vaping? Okay, so making sure I'm getting to the meat of the question. A great resource actually is teen.smokefree.gov. Smokefree.gov actually has great resources for any age, whether it's adults, pregnant women, younger kids, vaping specific, etc. But there's a lot of mobile apps and things that kids relate to. Again, they can have some little online support groups with other kids their age to help them. And I think they relate to that a little bit better. As a parent myself, I think we can talk to them about it. We can try to instill some of the dangers, but you know, kids think they're invincible. It is really hard to get them to believe that's gonna, you know, oh, that's never gonna happen to me, etc. The one thing I know I've spoken to my kids as a tobacco treatment specialist, there's one thing in common with every person that I work with. Every patient says one thing: if only I had never started. I wish I could rewind the clock and have never started. So if we can prevent them from starting in the first place, I think that's also very helpful.
I work very closely with the Truth Initiative out of Washington, D.C., and they actually have a texting program now. So if you go to truth.com and it's like their vaping quit program, the number and information's all there, and I don't have it memorized on the top of my head, but it's a tool for parents to text to see how they can help support their teens that are trying to quit, and also for teens specifically. And there's actually like a peer-to-peer aspect of it, of like other teens that are vaping. And so we've helped thousands and thousands of young people quit vaping because of that, because they can't use any other like cessation products such as the patches. And so support is one of the main like best ways to help teens quit from vaping. And so that is one tool, is the texting line from the Truth Initiative.
And Terry. Next question came in online. This question is from Sarah. Sarah, thank you very much for the question. I think Sarah's question is really geared toward our school principals and our two SROs. The question is, what are you seeing in our schools? So Sarah left the question a little bit open-ended. I suspect Sarah is asking a little bit about how pervasive is it, where is it occurring, perhaps where are they getting it, anything that you've seen just in terms of general patterns and trends of student use specific to our high school. Turn it back over to the panel.
Well, this is my third year as an SRO. I was at Papillion La Vista High School with Mr. Klein here for 2 years, and then I just switched over to Papillion South. We are seeing a lot of things in our school, but unfortunately, vapes are probably the most prevalent illegal item we're seeing in our schools. And this isn't to say that like it's the bad kids, the kids that get into trouble that are doing it. It's all sorts of kids. I mean, good kids. It affects everybody. So they're straight A students that we see. We find them with vapes. I mean, we're disappointed. We tell them we're disappointed. We just try to build that relationship with them and just try to inform them of better choices. But it's vapes. I don't want to get into all the nitty-gritty details about what we see in schools, because our schools really are great schools. But we're here tonight just to raise awareness for vaping and its THC products, such as the dab pens and THC devices there.
Part of the problem as school administrators is the devices are so small, and so kids can actually hide the devices in their sleeves. Backpacks obviously are a popular spot, but we're seeing kids that are vaping in restrooms. They'll go in the stalls together. Our girls now, that seems to be a big thing, and as a male, I can't barge into a girl's restroom, but we have to police that, so to speak, the best we can. But kids are doing it. Some kids are doing it in classrooms, in the hallways, and again, it goes back to that small cloud that you can't see like you could see with cigarette smoke, and it's just very, very hard to catch them in the act. And it's not like we're trying to catch them, but some kids make it real easy, and some are really good and clever with the devices.
I think another thing that we've seen this year that's really concerning is an upswing in the THC or the dab pens, and the amount or the concentration of the THC. We've seen some kids really, really high under the influence, so that's really been a concern for us as well.
Thank you, Andy, Jerry, and Jeff. When we pose this question of our student advisory panel, and I have 8 Monarchs and 8 Titans that we have lunch with and talk about what's going on in our schools, the one interesting question point that came up was vaping really isn't gender specific. What the students had told us was that you see every bit as many females as males and vice versa, which I thought was an interesting observation. So perhaps, Sarah, that gets to your question. This next question is from our live audience. It's a two-parter. I'm going to start with the second part because it's an easy answer. This one is, how can we access this presentation and watch with our child? So this is a Facebook Live presentation. If you've never accessed Facebook Live, not only is it a live event, but it is archived on the district website. So you can not only see the video as it's going, but also the questions and the interactions that occur online. So please check out our district website, and we'll keep this up for a long time. The first part of the question was, where are some addiction recovery classes or resources for us to access as parents? Panel.
As far as helping kids, again, because of the main cessation products are not approved for kids under 18, that is kind of a tricky point. I do know there are some physicians that, depending upon the patient, the case, etc., they may weigh the benefits and risks and may use some sort of medication or something to help that person. Again, as far as resources, I think kids identify very well with the social media, so that's where the teensmokefree.gov and the resources she mentioned here with the different programs, the texting things, they seem to like that stuff. As far as here in the state, there isn't a lot that's set up. There is 1-800-QUIT-NOW, which is also a free telephone number for anyone in the state of Nebraska. However, if you're under 18, they would not provide you with nicotine patches, gum, or lozenge, which they would for adults. They would provide 2 weeks free.
Going back online here, we had a similar question asked from both Dan and from Adam. Has to do with general advice for parents. And some of this has been touched on, but I think it bears asking again. Dan asked, what advice do you have for parents? Adam went a little bit further with the question, saying, what advice do you have for parents? What's the single best strategy we have for preventing our children from picking up vaping? Panel, please.
One thing I'd like to stress is that you are the parents. Your kids do not make the rules. Sometimes the parent has to put their foot down. You can search your kids' belongings. Technically, everything they own belongs to you. Parents, I've come across too many parents that are unwilling or do not want to look at their child's cell phone. Okay, that's where they're going to be talking the most. That's where they're going to share information with their friends or the social media world. Look at just monitoring. That's the one way I can't stress enough to parents is just monitor your kids. Look into what they're doing. Look into what you think they may be doing. I'm not saying pry and be a helicopter parent, but just be more involved and monitor your kids.
I'd say along with that, as high school principals, just providing research, articles, pictures. We have great communication that's available from our offices here, so just get that out to you as parents to see what devices kids are using and what they're used for. And having nights like this, Dr. Rickley is great too, because people get educated on that.
I would like to add that I think it's important to make sure these kids realize it's not just water. When they think of vapor, they think water. It's just some flavorings in water, and it's not the case. So making sure they understand that. And as a parent, cdc.gov, if you go to that website, right on the main page there, they have advice for parents to talk to your kids about vaping. And I think it's like 3 pages long, so I didn't print it, but it's got very nice information, just how to start the conversation. One of the things they mention is don't ask your kids specifically, are you vaping? You might just casually, as you see a commercial, say, hey, what do you know about this? Do you see this at school? And then they can maybe talk about it from the third person versus, what are you doing? And they might open up a little bit. So I would encourage to start there.
Yeah, I've been in youth-centered tobacco prevention work for about 8 years now, and one thing that approach that I've always taken it on, because I joined because I realized I was being targeted as a young person by like the tobacco industry and vaping industries. And so as much as we would talk about facts and like how it's harmful and everything, most teens understand that it's harmful, but they don't understand the part that they're targeted. And so as soon as you take it and turn it on like an industry that doesn't care about you and that's putting like profits over people, once you put it in that sense, I think the teens from personal experience are a lot more likely to listen, and especially with like that kind of like stick it to the man attitude that a lot of teens have from what I've seen. It kind of really sits with them more in that way, and they kind of have that more urgency to get involved in that sense. And two, if you do have concerns that your child is vaping, not directly asking them is a really good way, because they're more likely to talk about it in that third person, because it makes them more comfortable in that sense, and you're a lot likely to get a lot more information from them in that way. But just showing too that you're concerned for the product in that like kind of separate kind of sense, because if they see that you are concerned, they're more likely to take that to heart from everyone that I've talked to.
Definitely all good points. I definitely stress a great approach for parents is just to simply be more involved in their child's life, and with that is, as a parent, you know most what's different in your child's life every day by day when they're acting differently, and part of that very well could be because they might be using these vaping devices, or possibly marijuana, or drinking, things like that, and just be more involved and ask questions.
I think it's really important to, I think there's a couple of things. Early intervention and early detection. We have 14, 15, 16-year-old kids that are telling us they're addicted to vaping and nicotine. And I'm not a medical expert, but I think when they get to that point, it's not as easy as to say stop. I think there has to be probably some medical intervention and some counseling and therapy. So I think look for some signs with your kids. Are their grades dropping? Were they out for school activities and now they don't want to be out for school activities? Did their friends group change? Those are all things that might give you an indication, but it's really concerning as an educator on how it's impacting their education. We're not the medical profession, we're not law enforcement, we're educators, and we're watching kids that should have very promising futures that are really struggling in school because they're addicted to devices, and it's really difficult. I mean, I know both schools are seeing multiple offenders. We catch them with a vape or a device, and then we catch them again, and we catch them again. They can't stop. So it's really concerning. So I think the earlier intervention before maybe they're addicted is something that would be very important as well.
Thank you, panel. And Mr. Johnson's question's a really good segue to this next question, which comes to from our live audience here. And we do have time for one, perhaps two more questions. We do want to wrap this up here in the next several minutes. This parent wrote, I may have missed this, sorry. What are the signs of vaping? And I think Mr. Johnson started to kind of reiterate some of those classic signs of vaping. How can we be aware if we think that our child may be vaping at home or at school? Panel, any other additional thoughts in addition to what Mr. Johnson already asked?
Pods on the end. So many. No, give me the green one. When you start finding these little black or these little covers on your floor, that's a huge sign, because I can actually recall finding one of these before and I said, what is this? And I had no idea for the longest time until I found something like this and realized this is really, something's going on here. So those are some things to look for. But because it doesn't smell like traditional cigarettes, and it often smells, because it doesn't smell like traditional cigarettes and oftentimes smells fruity, the other thing I tend to notice is it smells like burnt kind of candy. I guess if you come into a room and you smell that, that raises a red flag.
And irritability is a big one too, because I know I have friends that vape or use Joule, and if they don't hit their Joule in within a few hours, they get pretty irritable, because it's such a that nicotine hit's very soothing for a lot of people whenever they are used to that. And so irritability is a big one, or even attention spans and mood swings are really common. So just kind of seeing your that change in your child's behavior in that sense is usually a pretty big indicator that they're using nicotine products.
Mood swings in teenagers? I don't know that. Sorry.
Last question of the evening. It came in online. It came from Pam. The question was, what happens if juuling or vaping products are confiscated at school? Probably a question for SROs and principals, but what do we do with this stuff when we find it?
Well, all of these products that I brought with me tonight, that's just a small fraction of the stash I have. I use them for training purposes. I have PowerPoints and presentations that I present to freshman health classes to get my point across. I help educate teachers on what these devices may look like. Last year or 2 years ago when I was at Monarchs, I got an email from Officer Dreffs with lots of pictures of these Joules that I hadn't seen yet, and how they look like USB devices, and I sent that out to all the staff, and it didn't take very long for teachers to start realizing that kids were like walking into class plugging these in. So
I haven't taken a pack of Marlboros off of any student in probably, honestly, 6-7 years. Lighters, we used to get lighters all the time, and yeah, we don't see lighters anymore either. So, but when we catch them as administrators with those devices, they go to our SROs.
It looks like we are at that time. Just a few things as we wrap up tonight's activity. Thank you again for our people that attended live. Thank you for the 130, 140 people that tuned in online. I do want to make a shameless plug before we sign off. We have a collaborative called PLV Cares. It's a collaborative, it's an initiative between the Papillion La Vista Community Schools, the City of La Vista, and the City of Papillion. Thank you, Mayor Kindig and Mayor Black, for your support. And one of the things that we have done is piloted a help hotline. It is 444-531-CARE, 444-531-CARE. And the purpose of that, did I get it backwards? Backwards, 531-444-CARE. 531-444-CARE. That's why you don't trust a superintendent in front of a live mic. So the purpose of this hotline, the service is free to anyone, parents, students, staff, community members. It's staffed full-time by Boys Town. It's high-quality counseling on the other end of the line. It's open 24 hours a day. So please access that resource. More information is available on the district website. I'd also like to thank the collaboration that we have with CHI Health and the Papillion and the La Vista Police Department that made this possible. Also want to thank the foundation one last time for their generous grant, which made tonight possible. And Ms. Annette Iman and our Director of Communications and all of our communications team here, thank you for making this possible as well. And last but by no means least, can we give a round of applause to our panel here tonight? This is Andy Rickley, your Superintendent of Schools. Thank you again for joining us, and everybody have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you very much.